Podcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Welcome and glad to have you this afternoon for the Think Realty video podcast. We're going to talk today with Nathan Trevino from Direct Lending Partners. He's going to talk about supercharged scaling, growing your real estate business in 2020. Before we get started, just a couple of quick updates for you. Just to remind you, we have our Think Realty Baltimore conference coming up March 21st and 22nd. We have a great list of speakers and sponsors. They're going to come, so that's a great opportunity if you're in the Baltimore, D.C. area to come and visit us and say hello by the booth. We want to let you know if you have any questions, please hold them till the end. And once we get to that point, just put them in the chat window and he'll be able to answer any questions you have. And then, of course, be on the lookout afterwards. We'll be sending you a link to the entire presentation that you can utilize over if you want to listen to any of it again. And with that, we'll just go ahead and introduce you. Nathan, are you there?
I'm here.
Awesome. We'll go right ahead.
Yeah, so thank you so much, and a big thank you and shout out to Rodney and certainly the whole Think Realty team. It's an honor to be able to speak here about supercharged scaling of your business, and it's a great time of year to talk about that. One, because it's that time of year where we reflect and look backwards at all the great things we've accomplished, but more importantly, set our sights to move forward. Most of us in real estate investing are looking to continue to grow within it, increase profits, and in order to do that, you need to do it with scale. We, as DLP, have scaled on a supercharged level, and so that's what we want to share a lot about how we have done that throughout our tenure here. And so briefly just about myself, again, my name is Nathan Trunfio. I'm president of DLP Direct Lending Partners. I've been in lending in real estate my entire career. Have helped finance or transact on over $1 billion of deals. In the last 2.5, 3 years that I've been here with DLP, we've done over $500 million in deals. And more importantly, we as a business in the lending side have scaled and grown over 55% year over year in both revenue and in profit. So we like to think that we know a little bit about scaling. I do have to plug just real quick. I do put out a lot of content, or try to. Hopefully you all think it's good. But it is branded under Talking Loudly with Nate. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel or connect with me on LinkedIn and Facebook. We're here to provide value and, again, talk a little bit about how we've scaled to the capacity that we're at. So just to go over a very brief agenda, we're here to talk about three main categories of things about supercharged scaling of your business. One is how to set yourself up for scaling. What are the first steps before you start to actually take the actions to scale? What do you need to do first? Second, what are the pitfalls? You know, especially as a lender, we've seen and we've also made tons of mistakes in trying to scale our business. So we want to share some of the things that we see real estate operators run into that can be pitfalls for scaling. And then lastly, but certainly not least, we want to go into 5 specific categories that can really help you catapult your business and enable you to scale, especially as we look into the new year here. So again, we're talking about scale, about consistent growth, not sacrificing revenue or profit. That is our focus. That's what we've done. And as Rodney said, we hope you have some good questions throughout this. I am going to answer them all at the end, but feel free to fire them away in the chat box as I'll come back to them at the tail end of the presentation here. So DLP Direct Lending Partners is actually a part of our family company called DLP Real Estate Capital. I'm going to take a quick second to tell and talk a little bit about us. It's not to brag or anything like that, but it's just to share why we think we're qualified to talk about scaling your business, because that's all we've done. We've done it at a rampant pace. We've been on the Inc. 500 fastest growing companies for, I think it's about 8 years now in a row, and are really proud of that. And we've done it through a number of key focuses. So we ourselves originally, everything sort of started with our founder, our CEO, Don Wenner. I'm sure he'll give a ton of the credit to the team that we've built over time. But we started as just a realty brokerage, and as Don is a realtor, and we scaled to the level that we're at now. So just to talk briefly about that progression is, we started as the realty brokerage. You fast forward to today, we're the #1 realty brokerage in Pennsylvania and New Jersey in transaction volume. We've actually done 1,800 transactions as a realty team this year. So we've certainly shown scale in growing a realty brokerage as a result of seeing a ton of inventory in our backyard, which is Lehigh Valley, Pennsylvania. Specifically, we're headquartered in Bethlehem, PA. We saw a lot of access to deals. So that got us into the flipping business. At that time, we were 10, 15 person company. We fast forward today, we flipped about 1,400 homes total. We're still somewhat actively flipping, although we scaled into more scalable types of business lines. So we also now build new construction. We've built over 200 plus unit developments here in Pennsylvania. We actually have about 100 open new construction projects building on scattered infill lots in Florida. So we have grown that from a builder here in Pennsylvania to a large-scale builder, and we actually acquired a builder called Bright Homes in Central Florida and have really scaled and grown that business to tremendous size. And then we have transitioned from the single-family space into multifamily. So we now own 10,000 doors. At the end of the month, it'll be 11,000 doors with everything we have under contract. We have, and we self-manage 70 to 80% of our properties. So we have a large property management group. We take a lot of pride in running all of our own construction management, which is certainly a lot to manage, but we have a great process built for that. And so we're now today a 350-person family of companies, about $800 million assets under management, and still fastly growing. And a lot of that is attributed to what we've done to set ourselves up for scale that, again, we're going to share here today. Last, but certainly not least, is DLP Direct Lending Partners. We honestly sort of got tired of paying other lenders to finance our deals and get comparable returns, and so we became a lender ourselves. As you heard, we're operators by trade first. So as a lender, we try to do everything to enable our good borrowers and experienced borrowers the ability to scale through providing them with consistent capital. The important part about that is that we do hard work to raise all of our own money. We raise it from high net worth and ultra high net worth individuals. That's how we acquire our properties through our equity strategies, and then we deploy our monies from the lending strategies through the monies that we raise. We have full control over that money. What that means to you is we actually have the ability to create relationships with experienced operators where we can make decisions on an exception-based system in order to help you scale your business. We lend on single-family fix and flip products, single-family bridge loans, single-family new construction, and multifamily bridge loans, specifically for repositioning and providing heavy lift financing for value-add plays in the multifamily space. Everything that we lend on, we operate on, and we are operators. So again, we try to operate a lending company as an operator. And again, we've been able to scale both businesses, the equity side and the debt side, because of some of the practices that we'll go through now. So that's a little bit about us and why we like to think and hope that we're qualified to talk about this such an important topic at this time of year of supercharged scaling. So where do you start first when it comes to scaling? No matter when you scale and how you scale, you have to be laser focused. So the first thing that scaling begins with is something that many of you know about. Many of you know about it, but you don't like doing it. And that is designing goals and having goals, most importantly. So this is where you have to foundationally start in order to be able to scale. What I always have to say is that how do you know where you're going to end up if, one, you don't know where you're going, and two, you don't know how you're going to get there? And the best way to do that as an organization is, or whether you're small or large, is to set specific goals. So you have to start with that so that you have the end game in mind and you know the exact plays that you're going to go through in order to get down the field and win the game. So what we have here on this slide is essentially some fodder for you to sort of use as you contemplate what you need to set your goals on and for as you move into this new year. And one thing that we do, it's sort of an icebreaker we do to start a lot of our strategy sessions. We call it start, stop, and keep doing. It's nothing that we necessarily came up with, but it's a great way to get the mind going. And this is the same when it comes to goal designing and planning. What should you as a business owner or a business start doing? What should you stop doing? And what should you keep doing? They're great questions to ask independently so that you can analyze them to figure out what goals you need to tie into something that you should start doing as a business or you should stop doing. Another sort of two facets to focus in on when setting goals is, one, what is your BHAG? What is your big, hairy, audacious goal? What is a goal that you can think of that makes the hair on the back of your neck stand up? Or, as I have here, makes your palms sweat? These are things that you really need to set your sights on, a big picture. Think big. Go after something big, because you're not going to hit any shot that you don't take. So if you don't take a big shot, you're not going to be able to scale your business. And then the other is, what is the number? If you could only pick only one goal for this next upcoming year, what would it be? So these are all some things to think about as you design goals. We're going to get into more of the logistical goal planning and designing, but it is imperative to start with what goals you're going to set before you even start to set the goals themselves. And this is something that we take a lot of pride in and focus on, and you'll see a little bit more about that in a second here. So another concept that we firmly emphasize, we did not come up with SMART goals, this acronym. This is something that we make sure when we set goals as an organization and we have our individual set goals, that they are all goal oriented with the acronym of SMART: specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. So I'm going to break each of these down. Some of them are a little bit intuitive, but I'll give some examples to where people fall short in making sure they hit SMART goals. Because if you ever set a goal and you later realize you lost track of what that goal was, or specifically what you were targeting for, or you kept changing your goal. And if you run into those scenarios, unfortunately, that means you didn't set a SMART goal to begin with. So SMART is going to lay out a groundwork to focus your efforts, to measure your results, to hold yourself and others accountable, and to, at the end of the day, isn't specific. How many specific deals do you want to do? Is it 2? Is it 10? Because my deals could be one number, but yours could be different. So you have to make it something that is specific. It also has to be something that's measurable. Again, a common goal is, I want to improve X. I want to improve my construction management. But how do you really gauge what improvement is? And how do you also hold yourself or your company accountable to improving if you don't have something that you can measure and stack the cards up against? So you have to say, I want to improve my construction management by facilitating my flips and my renovations within 80 days from start to finish. That's something that's measurable. You can measure, did you do it in 80 days or not? It's sort of a zero-sum answer. You either did it and you won, or you didn't. But you have to make it measurable so that you can come back and analyze it. The next two I'm going to tie together of achievable or attainable and realistic. So achievable is something that, can you do it? If you have one deal under contract now and you want to buy 5 or even 6, 7, 8 in January, is that realistic for you to transact in January on that many if you only have one under contract now? Is that really achievable? That's the question you got to ask yourself about your goals. Now, also you take it a step further and say, is it realistic? I run a lot of the sales team here at Direct Lending Partners, and we often have conversations about, what do you want to do from a production standpoint? And they come out with goals of, I want to close 8, 10 deals the next month. Well, if you only have 2 deals in your pipeline and you only closed 1 last month, is it realistic for you to close 10 in this next month? And you say the same thing about investing. Is it actually realistic for you to accomplish that? Because the last thing you want to do, whether you set a goal for yourself or for your team, is to set something that you know and they know is not realistic. Because if you have a goal that's not realistic, then you don't really have a goal that's specific that you can stack up to and say, I actually did a good job, I did improve, and I did hit this, and it was successful, or I didn't. If you set a goal that's not realistic, you're walking into that goal sort of knowing you're not going to hit it. And that defeats the whole purpose of the goal itself. The last one is time-bound or timely. I prefer time-bound mainly because you have to set a specific time frame for doing what you want to set out to do. For example, I want to do 10 deals. That's not timely, that is not time-bound, because I could do 10 deals in 50 years and still hit that goal. Or I could do 10 deals in 2 months and hit that goal. But you didn't set a time frame to analyze, did you successfully hit what you were seeking out to do or not? So make sure that your goals are specific, they're measurable, they're attainable and achievable, they're realistic, and they're timely. If your goal hits all of those marks, then you have a goal that you can realistically set out to do and accomplish. Make sure you're not setting sort of gimme goals that are easy that you should do in the normal course of business. Push yourself a little bit. I always say there's a go to the bank goal, which you're going to go to the bank on the fact you're going to hit this. And then there's your little bit of stretch goal. Your stretch goal still needs to be achievable and realistic, but you should push yourself. Goals are meant to push yourself. It's amazing what can be done when you set good goals. what I have up now is what we call rocks. This is something that comes from the EOS platform. If you've ever read the book Traction, we've modified this significantly in our organization. And this is my example of us as an organization putting in place SMART goals among everybody. This is not just a company level thing. So a rock itself is a 90-day focus. It's a 90-day goal. It is a SMART goal. It has to be a SMART goal that is set specifically with the timeliness of 90 days. So if you think about that in a given year, we go through rocks 4 times a year. That's 4 different goals. When you break down goals into sort of, you chunk it, you do it in 90-day segments, it's amazing what you can accomplish if you're laser focused in something in 90 days, and then you do that 4 times over, what you can accomplish in a year, whereas other businesses that don't have a specific strategy and design plan and goals you can do stuff in 90 days that they might not only be able to do in a year. So what we do is we take this a sort of a step further and make sure everybody in the company has goals. So we have 350 people. We ask everybody to set 3 specific and SMART goals, I should say, in each quarter. So that's 350 employees setting 3 personal goals about themselves, their life. I set a goal, or my rocks for last quarter, or for the last quarter of last year, to ski 3 times. It's a really simple one, but it forced me to do it. And I had to find a buddy to do it, and we lay out milestones to make sure we're on path with doing it. But it's important to set these goals in your personal life, not only in your business. But when we have 350 people setting 3 business goals 4 times a year, now math isn't that good, but I think it's about 1,500 total goals that our 350 awesome team members set forth to. Sure, we don't complete them all, but we keep them as front of mind. We reinforce this throughout all of our meetings. And so the point is, when you set goals that are SMART and set in small periods of time, like 90 days, and you are determined to accomplish them, and you accomplish more often than you don't, you will be more successful and set up for scales than the rest of your competition. And that is just point blank fact. That's it. End of sentence. So I encourage you to take ownership of your goals. Make sure they're created throughout the ranks of your company if you have multiple team members. But even if you don't, it's important to write them down, because they say, I think it's 90% of goals will not be hit if they're not written down, and something along those lines. So commit to them, have a plan, make sure they're SMART, and at the end of the day, you have to believe in them and then take the action to complete them all. So tied into goal setting, we have to talk a little bit about numbers in your KPIs. So KPIs, it sounds like a spiffy name. Many of you probably know this, but it stands for key performance indicators. And specifically what it is it's really metrics that relate to and reflect on your business's productivity and execution. It's the same thing as that. How do you know where you're going to go if you don't specifically know what you're going towards? And more importantly, you don't have the ability to analyze where you're at, given that you don't know the specific metrics to follow. So you have to know your numbers. It is imperative. If you do not know your numbers, then how can you really make good business decisions? And so what we encourage you all to do between now and the end of the year or into the next year is find the metrics, the key numbers, the key facts that will help you analyze your business's execution, and write them down. Make sure you can track them all. Because if you can't, again, how can you really analyze? And so I have some specific examples I'll get to in a second. But one that we encourage real estate investors to do and take ownership in is, at the very least, know what your break-even number is. What amount of money do you need to make to break even itself, or break even in the effect of putting profits and money back in your pocket? Many of you might have left a W-2 job to go into real estate investing full-time. For example, if you were paid $120,000 salary and you want to bring home that same $10,000, even though now you're an entrepreneur, you need to build that into your break-even number. But how can you really gauge if you're running a successful business, and how can you gauge your level of scale if you don't even know what your break-even is? So that's just one fine-tuned point of knowing your metrics. You have to know metrics when it comes to marketing, your conversions, your return on investment of the marketing expenditures. There's plenty of things that you need to know in order to figure out how you're going to get there. So once you've identified and laid out the most important metrics to your business, keep them in front of you. Not only keep them in front of you, but find ways to keep them in front of your people. On the lending company that we run, I have an automated email that's sent from our CRM that show the main KPIs for my salespeople every single morning. I review the report each morning. I'll send kudos to people that did a great job, and then I'll schedule follow-up one-on-ones if I see people falling short. But that's just another example of keeping the numbers in front of you. But you first have to know what the numbers are that you're going to keep track of. What I have now is a specific example. This is actually taken of a survey from 2 of our top tier borrowers, real estate investors in the single family space. We are internally analyzing launching a direct to seller text campaign. If you need a referral on a service provider, come follow up with us. But the point of this is that these are actual real live numbers, and they actually, it's funny enough, they both came out to the same round conversion numbers, but 2 specific tests of investors that this is the metrics and the granularity that they have in their business, tied to how many pieces of data and leads they had, how many people responded to it, how many actually converted to appointments, how many appointments turned to offers, and how many offers turned into deals. So you can see through there all the specifics per se, but when you go and think about what are the most important numbers, and then more importantly, what do you do with these numbers, you have to be able to back them into goals and holding each other in your business accountable to hitting these metrics, because there is no point, if you're going to put together metrics just to put together metrics, there's no point in doing that. It's a waste of your own time. You need to be able to put together metrics that you can make business decisions off of and set goals off of. So for example, in this scenario, you want to start at the end result. You know, if you want to close one additional deal and you haven't launched a text campaign, and these are the conversion metrics that you can expect or that you want to expect, in order to acquire the one additional deal, you're going to have to send out and have 5,500 pieces of data that you can send through the text blast system. So you have to know all of the numbers, all of your conversions. You have to split test, back test them, make sure that they're accurate. You have to put together a system for tracking. But this is an example of operators that we met with that had these specific metrics laid out all the way to the T of the most important one of the deal closed. So just to throw some additional sort of info in there, as I would hope many of you are doing direct-to-seller marketing. Here is some what we've seen in a lot of the testing that we've personally done as operators, or just conversations with our great borrowers and the people that we partner with that are heavily in single-family real estate investing. So when you're running call campaigns, depending on your data, you can usually expect a 10 to 15% response rate. For text campaigns, it's usually a little bit higher, around the 15 to 20%, as you'll see. Here in these specific examples, they hit exactly that metric. Email campaigns have a wide disparity of range of conversions of contact and responses. It's anywhere from 10 to 30%, depending on data and the messaging that you send out and when you send it out. And then what most people do, the easiest direct-to-seller mentality of marketing is direct mail. It's crazy to think that you really only get, on average, about a 3% response rate on direct mail. And all those metrics I just gave you in conversions, those are only response rates. That's not conversion rates. You had to then build out the rest of your metrics in your funnel to fully analyze, where you're at, how you're doing, where you need to improve, and what goals you need to set for yourself and any relevant team members. So again, a little bit of insights to the specifics of why knowing your numbers is super important, but you have to first start with coming up with your goals, then laying out specific goals, then make sure you have measures in place to analyze your metrics and your numbers so that you can hold yourself accountable and your team members accountable, and make sure that your goals are specific and measurable for that matter. So we talked now a little bit about how to start, where to get started in scaling your business, and it's all that we just went through. We next want to talk about some of the pitfalls, some of the challenges that we very often see, and honestly, we've personally seen ourselves as operators as we've scaled our business. So the biggest challenge that we see, and that is widely known in scaling a business, is most companies fail to consistently, keyword consistently, grow and scale their business. Because it's easy to say, I'm going to set all these great goals, I got all these metrics lined up that I'm going to analyze and keep track of, and you see progress and you have growth in January, your best January ever, or your January outproduced your December. But that's not necessarily scaling. Scaling is consistently growing at a consistent pace. Sometimes it's actually a little bit slower pace than what you would want or even expect. I mean, sure, we touted 55% growth in our lending company, but you can be scaling at a much smaller growth rate. But the important part is that you are growing consistently. Scaling is not a one-time action. And where we see a lot of people and companies fail at scaling is they take their eye off the ball, they take their eye off their disciplines, and they don't consistently commit to doing things over and over the right way. in order to create a business that's scalable. Within that, outside of the lack of consistency, some of I'll say the 5 main reasons that we've seen the inconsistency in scaling and inability to scale and the pitfalls are listed here, and we'll talk briefly about it. So the not having capital is usually one of the most obvious pitfalls that people fall into when trying to scale and then running into pitfalls. You have to have a good capital plan. The bottom line is that a lot of investors actually don't have a plan for the capital. Sure, they know exactly how much money is needed at closing to take down a deal, but how much do you really need to get the renovation started? Then how much are you going to need to have in holding costs? And then what are you going to need when you go to dispose of the property for marketing or staging or something along those lines? Do you have all of that planned out to a T on every given deal, not just one deal, but every given deal? You have to stay focused on a capital plan to support your scaling plan for your business. It's one thing to say, I want to do 50 units this year. Do you have the capital to do it? Or do you have the capital partners to do it? I will say my one additional piece of advice is always, always, always have reserves. That's one thing that we are short-sighted on a lot of times as investors. We want to keep growing. We want to do the next deal. I got this great new deal that I want to buy. Make sure you have reserves in the bank for when things don't go exactly as planned. And we can lay out the best plans in the world, but you can't execute 100% on all of them. So you got to have reserves is my last sort of tidbit on making sure you avoid the pitfall of having insufficient capital. The second that we see also very often is people cutting corners on their due diligence of buying properties. Especially when people are moving from single family to multifamily, there's a whole nother level of due diligence that needs to be done. If you need any help with it, hit us up. We consider ourselves certainly experts in analyzing multifamily deals. But even on single family, people that are experienced real estate investors, they don't always do maximum due diligence on their deal acquisitions. They didn't truly themselves vet out what the as-is value is. Are they truly buying at a discount? Sure, they got one suggested budget for a scope of work on their project from one of their contractors or from their construction manager, but did they vet that and do all thorough due diligence? Did you have a scope of work list that you walked the property with and make sure you didn't miss any items? If you are not the construction expert, you don't have the construction expert on your team, did you get 3 bids to make sure that you vetted out the total cost? Because your total cost of renovation can completely blow up your deal. And then lastly, the last piece of doing due diligence on a deal that people cut corners on is your ability to, or the amount of time, the absorption rate of the market that you're in, the amount of time it takes to dispose of a property. And then secondly, right around that topic is what you're going to sell for. But if you don't do deep due diligence and consistent due diligence on all your acquisitions, you're going to run into some bad deals. And one bad deal can really derail you from scaling your business. So you have to follow the proper due diligence mechanisms. I'm going to talk more about the right people in some future segments here, but bringing in the wrong employee can be a major pitfall. They say, I think it's the U.S. Department of Labor, the wrong hire can cost you in expenses as a business owner 30% of that person's salary. That's a lot of money. Not only that, but if you have the wrong person that doesn't fit your culture and there's toxicity brought in by this person, they're going to bring everybody else down. So having the wrong people on your team is a huge pitfall. Sometimes, many of you might have learned this the hard way, having the wrong partner in your business involves having the wrong people. And we see a lot of investors really get thrown off, and it provides them with an inability to continue to grow if they have the wrong partners or people on their team. Many investors don't thoroughly have a lead gen and a sales related plan. We'll get into this again, and it's one of the keys to making sure that you focus in on as you scale the business, but not having a good marketing plan, not having a good ability to drive in leads, and then more importantly, not having a good management and plan to manage the conversion of those leads to close deals or appointments or so on and so forth is a huge pitfall. You can't just throw money at the wall when it comes to marketing, bring in a lot of leads and expect them to all close. There is a whole acceleration system that we're going to talk about that you have to be cognizant of in order to make sure that you're growing. Huge pitfall that people fall into because they think, oh, I just continuously get deals. I don't know how I get them, but I get them. You have to have a plan for that. And then the last biggest pitfall, honestly, I personally fall victim to this. We as a company at times have fallen victim to this, but it's something called staying focused on the hedgehog principles. So many of you might have heard of you can be a jack of all trades or a master of none, or I would rather do 10 things 1,000 times than 1,000 things 10 times. It's the same concept. The hedgehog principle, hedgehog concept comes from the Jim Collins book, Good to Great. Really highly encourage you to read that. And it emphasizes staying focused on fewer things that are within your areas of expertise and being committed to it. Not falling victim to shiny object syndrome, not going outside the curb, and staying disciplined in what you have set out to do. You know, if you set a smart goal, you stay focused on it until you've executed on it. If for some reason you change your business plan, then did you really set a good goal up front? Was it really that important enough? And then more importantly, why are you moving away from it? Are you falling victim to what the other side of the hedgehog concept is, the fox? Are you a fox? Are you chasing around everything that runs in front of you, falling victim to shiny object syndrome? This is an easy point to talk about. It's a harder one to stay committed to, but it is a very important thing to avoid in order to make sure that you are continuously scaling. Because scaling takes focus, it takes belief and discipline and a plan. If you're getting distracted by other items consistently, you're not going to be able to stay on course and you're not going to be able to scale. So money, due diligence, people, lead gen and sales, and staying focused on the main thing, those are the 5 pitfalls that many people fall victim to that 100% will be preventative to allowing you to scale your business. And we're here to talk about scaling. So the last piece on the pitfalls is you got to ask yourself the questions, are you prepared to scale? You know, we talked about having the right capital partner, having the right money. Do you have the right people? Do you have the right operations to scale? But the most important part that I want to talk about on this slide here is, are you ready and committed to scale? Because it's okay if not. I was just speaking with a great investor literally last week at a mastermind event in San Diego, did 40 deals last year. You know what his goal was? To dial it back to 20 deals. Why? Because he went from 20 to 40 deals the prior 2 years. He lost his profitability. So he's going to dial it back. He's going to scale it back. And there's nothing wrong with that. And you don't have to scale in order to be better and make more money. But if you want to scale, you have to be committed to it. And then you have to follow all these principles we talked about. And that's where we're going to get into the specific 5 pieces of the puzzle that you need to have in place, that you need to focus on consistently in order to scale. And this is stuff that, again, we take a lot of pride in because this has been our recipe for scaling to 350 plus team members and a lot of assets under management and significant growth year over year. So what you're looking at is essentially the machine that we put together and the mechanical pieces within the machine that allow us to move onwards and certainly upwards in the growth curve. And so that's going to be strategy. Do you have a specific plan? We talked a lot about that. I'll go into that in a little more detail. Do you have the right people? Do you have a path for your people? Do you have an acceleration plan that can allow you to throw gasoline into this machine to help it go even faster and go farther? And then do you have the operational setup and mindset in order to scale? And that's what I want to dig into, just a little bit more specific detail on this. So strategy, we talked a lot about the most important thing in strategy, which is setting good goals. We talked about making them smart, making sure you have metrics to analyze to make sure that you can hold yourself accountable to your SMART goals. And that absolutely is a huge piece of strategy. But what a lot of times we, especially as operators that don't have a large scale company, is starting even more at a foundational level of that when thinking about the strategy to growing your business. And what I'm referencing is specifically having a mission and a purpose. So what is your mission? What do you do? And who do you do it for? It's pretty easy to come up with that, you would think. But when you really start to turn the screws and say, okay, I'm a real estate investor. My mission is to make a lot of money for myself by doing good real estate transactions. But is that really what drives you? Is that really what you're doing and for whom? Or are you purchasing distressed assets, helping out a distressed homeowner, repositioning a property to revitalize a neighborhood, to then sell to a new homeowner or to a homeowner that can take pride in the property that they own? You know, you can see a whole different perspective on the mission that can really make yourself and your whole team and organization tick in a different way. Because if you have a specific intangible emotional goal, you will get a lot more people to follow suit, and you personally will have a lot more drive to accomplish what you want when you know and understand that. And that ties right into your purpose. Is what is your why? Why are you doing this? But if you don't define that, then it's going to be really hard for you to wake up each morning and do all these nitty-gritty items. I mean, what we've talked about, setting SMART goals and holding people accountable to goals and setting metrics and using them to hold people accountable and yourself accountable and analyzing your profitability, those are not glorious things to do. So if you don't define your why, then you're going to have a hard time going through the blood, the sweat, and the tears that you need to go through to scale your business. If you have a team, or if you don't have a team, having a mission and a purpose is just as important. You have to start with the fundamental basics in order to then have a more specific strategy where you can set goals and go after those targets. So that's all the high-level foundational strategy. The other sort of things I want to talk about briefly is, we know, many of you know what a SWOT analysis is. You might have learned it in business school or you read it in a book. It's a little boring, but it stands for your strengths, your weaknesses, your opportunities, and your threats. Some business philosopher or strong businessman or woman came up with this principle probably many, many, many years ago. But it's very important to really in a detailed way, know your strengths and your weaknesses. What are you good at? What are you not so good at? You know, what do you need to start, stop, and keep doing related to your strengths and your weaknesses? Then when you think about opportunities, sure, what are your opportunities to grow? What's your opportunities to scale? What's your opportunities to improve? Think about what your strengths and your weaknesses are in order to drive and come up with your opportunities. When you come up with those opportunities, set specific and SMART goals based upon them. And so the last piece here related to the SWOT analysis is threats. But what I want to talk about in regards to threats is something a little bit differently than what many times we think, because you think of threats and you think of something that is going to infringe and prevent you from doing something in your business. But realistically, I tie threats to opportunities, because you need to think about your competition and a lot of your threats as opportunities to either keep doing what you're doing to do something very well and accomplish it, or to stop doing something. And those threats, you can make opportunities out of them. That's sort of my point number one on threats. My point number two is specifically, your threats might be perceived as your competitors, but your competitors shouldn't always be threats. How can you grow, scale your business based off of partnering or learning from your competitors? If you know everything that your competitor does and they're truly a competitor at the same level as you, you can figure out ways to either partner with them to accelerate your growth or to learn from what they are and aren't doing to find niches for you to continue to grow. Now, what I have here is our specific and way more detailed SWOT analysis. So I apologize, the font is a little small, so you might not be able to read all of this, but this is something that we each and every year wipe the slate clean and do from scratch. It's called our compass. This is what drives us each and every year. I'm going through this right now. I have a bunch of our team members collaborating on this, and then we're going to roll it out in something we call Vision Day in January to the rest of the company and team. This is writing down, again, wipe the slate clean, do this each and every year, your purpose, your mission, your strengths, your weaknesses, your opportunities, your threats, your 1 year bullseye. What are you going to shoot for this year? What are you going to go after? Your 3-year aim. What are you going to do over the next 3 years? We identify and lay out who the existing leaders are of our business. Not only who we have now, but who are we going to hire and what do we need to hire? We lay all of that out in this document. Who's our core client? What's our BHAG, our big, hairy, audacious goal? What are our opportunities to 10x our growth? So you might not pick up too much on what you see in the slide, but just know that we really focus in on strategy, not just like 10 years ago when Don Wenner started all the DLP real estate capital companies. We do this each year to make sure that we're focused on growth and scale and have a specific strategy to get there. We do have these blank templates. So if you want one and want a copy of it to lay out your own goals and your own compass for this upcoming year, I have a call to action at the end, but it's email us at info@directlendingpartners.com. You'll have it at the last slide, and we'll be more than happy to share it with you. It's a very impactful piece of how we look to scale our business moving forward. So we talked about people before. The points I want to emphasize on this is, again, actually taken from Jim Collins. We emphasize having the right people in the right seats. You have to have the right people on the bus to make sure the bus successfully gets to its destination. And what are the right people? The right people are people that fit your culture and that fit your core values. If you have somebody that doesn't fit your core values or embody your core values, they're going to become toxic and they're going to diminish the effectiveness and even the enjoyment that your people get working at your organization. So we analyze people, are they the right culture fit? The second is, are they in the right seat? What that means specifically is, are their skill sets in line with what you need them to do? And so that is a very important part, because you might have some great people that are the right person, but you might not have them in the right position to succeed for themselves or to benefit and scale your business. So you have to analyze that. We also then break down each of our people into analyzing their responsibilities. We lay this out in great detail when we hire somebody, so that there's that accountability on doing the job, what we expect them to do, and then we hold them accountable to, at the same time, very detailed expectations. You have to be able to lay out specific. A lot of this is numbers. It's almost SMART related. It's specific and measurable and time bound. What you want each person to do. Their responsibilities to buy additional properties and work on the acquisitions team is the responsibility. That's doing the job. But buying or transacting and locking up 3 properties a month is the expectation tied to your acquisition team and members' expectations of what you want them to do. That's how you can hold them accountable. So that's where we look at people, right seat with specific responsibilities to do the job, and then we hold them accountable to the expectations that we lay out up front. What you have on the screen here, I won't go through all these in detail, but these are a number of different facets, whether you're a large-scale company or you're a one-man or woman band or a two-man or woman band. You need to have people that can fill all these responsibilities. They might not work for you as employees, but they might be contract work. You have to have somebody to find deals and take them down. You need somebody to manage the construction. You need somebody to manage property management if you're holding the properties or selling them if you're flipping them. You have to have somebody to take care of your accounting, the financing on your deals when you come to direct lending partners, insurance, attorneys specifically for writing the right contracts, especially if you're operating in multiple states. You have to have a good attorney. And then you need a leader. Most of the time, that's going to be you. You might fit all of these different categories as a real estate investor. But the bottom line is you have to know that you have people either that you work with that don't work for you or that work for you to cover all these bases. Because otherwise, you won't be in a position to scale if you don't have the right people in the right seats that fill all the responsibilities that you need done. You then have to have a path for your people to move along. So what we really have emphasized, and it's very easy to do on the lending side, is we implement standard operating procedures. It's like a bank-related corporate type term, but it's very important, even if you're just a one-person show. You have to analyze what are the repeatable actions in your business, and then you have to lay out the specific processes that you expect somebody to follow each time you run into those repeatable opportunities. If you're a one-person band, again, you should have still standard operating procedures. Why? Because it will help you avoid the one pitfall of not doing proper due diligence on your deals. If you have a full standard operating procedure on how you analyze a budget on a property, you walk the interiors of the property, you count the windows, you count the doors, you count how many are going to be replaced, you walk outside the property, you make sure you get on the roof, you check the foundation, and so on and so forth. You have all of those laid out in standard operating procedures in sequential order. You're going to be less likely to miss areas of due diligence. One way you can augment your processes is to build out checklists. And that's the other thing that we have highlighted here. Especially if you have people you're going to hold accountable to standard operating procedures, you can build out checklists, make them formally check it off, figure out a way to hold them accountable, not just to check the box, but to actually do it, so that then you know that you're not missing any opportunities or you're not letting anything slip through the cracks. All of this is imperative for scale. My last piece on here is your service level agreements. You have your operating procedures, but in what time frame are you going to have things completed in? And that's where you relay that expectation with either the people that work for you or work with you on, once I complete a renovation, my property should be listed on MLS within 2 business days. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. That's my service level agreement with my realtor. You can look at that at unit turns. You can look at that at your salespeople calling leads, conversion levels on it, but you have to have an agreement to the time frame that it's done, because it's one thing to set standard operating procedures, but if people don't know when and how quickly they need to get it done, you're going to fall short in getting your business in an opportune position to scale. We talked about acceleration before too, but this is a huge key area that's often overlooked by investors. You have to have a specific lead gen plan. I mean, sure, you can operate a great business without it, but if you want to scale, you have to know how many opportunities you're driving in and be able to know how many you're going to convert. And how are you going to do it? I mean, nowadays, when you go direct to seller, you can do direct mail, you can do call blast, you can do email blast, you can do text blast, you can do door knocking, you can do driving for dollars. There's a ton of ways to drive in leads. You have to have a specific plan for how you're going to do it so that you can know your numbers and hold yourself and your team accountable to it. At the same time, you have to have a good sales support and sales conversion system. You have to provide them with resources. You have to provide them with oversight, with management, with other tools. If you have salespeople that you hold accountable to doing and having certain conversations, build out a script for them to follow. And then with all of that is back to knowing your numbers. You have to have metrics that you can analyze to make sure you're on or off pace with your acceleration plan. But the bottom line is, to scale, you must have an acceleration plan. Think of acceleration, which is the combination of your marketing and your sales combined. That is acceleration. That is how you grow. This is the gasoline that you put in your car to make sure that it goes faster and that it goes farther. If you don't have gasoline in your car or on a fire, it's hard to imagine it to get it to scale. And my last point here of area to focus in on, there's tons of training and a whole training we can do, because we like to think we run very good operations. But what the twist I have here is that, sure, you have to have great operations. You have to have a good level of accountability and understanding with your people. You have to be very transparent with them. You have to be able to provide tools. You can't just hire people and expect them to do the job, especially if you don't give them the support, the resources, the training, the guidance, that accountability. People want to be held accountable. But if you don't provide them with that support, you're not going to be able to scale your operations. You have to make decisions off of fact. You have to know your numbers. And then the last two things that are very important is you have to be future focused, hence why you have to have goals. If you do not think of moving forward in the future and are not focused on that future, you won't be able to scale, because you won't have any direction to go in. And then you have to have the discipline to hold yourself accountable, your people accountable, to do the little things, to do the 10 things 1,000 times right. That's not glorious, in order to have yourself in an opportune position to scale. It's easy to talk about this type of stuff. It's next level to be able to have beliefs in it, to have passion towards operations, and then to execute on it. This is not glorious stuff. This is hard stuff. It's nitty-gritty stuff. This is where you get the blood and you shed the tears on this stuff, but it's imperative. If you don't run good operations, then you're really going to have a hard time to scale. So again, there's a lot of things that we covered here. You first start with setting good goals and knowing your numbers within those goals. You have to avoid the pitfalls, which really tie back into the 5 key areas of focuses of strategy, people. Make sure your people have a path. Make sure you have an acceleration plan, gasoline with sales and marketing to scale, and then make sure you're operationally set up in order to be able to facilitate the scale of your business. So there's a lot of stuff we talked about from all levels, a high level, a low level, and a detail level. We've looked at from a telescope through a microscope, through just looking out at a wide field here. Hopefully you've gotten a lot out of this. So I do want to take some time to answer any questions. I don't think I see anything in the chat here, but this is the time here. And while we have people chime in with any questions, I lastly also want to show sort of our call to action. We want to continue to provide value as we have shown scale and growth as an operator, and certainly as a lending company, and a lending company that helps other operators grow with our fix and flip product, new construction, and multifamily bridge. But more importantly, we want to provide additional value outside of just the money we have to deploy and help your business scale. So if there's anything in here that you've seen you have follow-up questions on, or you want a copy of our template of our compass to set your own vision for the next year, 3 years, and moving forward. Or we also have a life assessment goal that we sent out, actually an email campaign through Think Realty, awesome partners of ours, that we'd be more than happy to provide you with. Or if you want this presentation as a whole to share with your team or do anything with it, we want to provide it to you. Email us at info@directlendingpartners.com, and we'll provide that with you as quickly as we can. Again, hope we provided a lot of value, but I do want to take some time here to answer any questions. All right. I'm hoping the lack of questions means that people are thinking a lot about how they're going to scale and grow their business. But again, please fire away with anything. Again, shoot us an email if you would like anything there. But if you can have access to the chat box, type away, and here to answer any questions you got. All right. I got one question here coming through. What's the most important factor out of all this for scale? And man, that's a tough question. So what I would answer that with is, I I go back to, man, Chet Holmes. I try to follow a lot of sales training. Chet Holmes is a big advocate of what he calls pig-headed discipline and determination. To me, that is the number one facet we talked about at the very end in the operational section of what to focus in on. But that determination and that discipline, whether that's setting goals, finding and holding people accountable to metrics, avoiding pitfalls, focusing in on the 5 areas of growth and scale, the discipline and the determination to follow suit and grow and scale and profitability, to me is the most important aspect. So certainly a good question, tough question. Who knows? I hope I got the right answer there, but it's definitely a good one to think about yourselves. Other than that, I do not think that we have any other questions here. So I'll pause another 10 seconds. Otherwise, again, I very much thank everybody for the time. I hope you got a lot of value out of this. Please email us here at info@Direct Lending Partners if you would like any of these additional tools, if you'd like for us to see if we're a good capital partner for you, or if you have any questions on anything. Cool. That's what I got. Last plug. Check me out, Talking Loudly with Nate. Stay tuned, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and let's make it an awesome end to this last quarter of the year, the end of the year. And it's crazy to think the end of a decade. We're starting a new decade moving forward. How are you going to scale your business, and what are you going to do about it now in order to put yourself in a position for scale?
Hey, Nate.
Talk to you soon. Yes.
We actually have a couple of questions. I'm not sure if you're not seeing in the chat. If you have a few minutes to answer them.
Yeah, of course, Rodney. Yes, please. I do not see them on my end, so please.
Okay, so one asks, where do you see the market going in 2020?
That's an awesome question. I actually had the pleasure of seeing a presentation last week from John Burns, a well-renowned economist. And where we see the market is, I don't see the music slowing down or stopping too much in the near future. Houses are still targeted and looks like they're going to appreciate. Especially people are adjusting their investment strategies a lot right now. They're not able to find as much profit from a fix and flip perspective, so they're buying, fixing, and holding the BRRR strategy. And I think that is a very great strategy moving forward because there's such a shortage in housing for renters, and there's a lot larger desire for people to rent. As far as a potential crash, again, I don't see that happening anytime soon. There are a lot of the inverted yield curve, for example, looks like we might be running into that. Sure, there is going to be some slowdown. We're not going to see as fast of appreciation, although this year, I should say, 2019, I think it was about a 3.4 average appreciation across the nation. John Burns' group was predicting, or actually I think it was CoreLogic was predicting 5.4% appreciation this upcoming year. And there's a lot of things that are in the midst right now. We started to see some signs of some slowdown. I think we're going to see a little bit of a shift from what is definitely a seller's market to a in-between sellers buyers market. It's tough to answer in more specificity, because there's a lot to say about each individual market, but something that I have to say you have to be cognizant of all of the macroeconomic trends that are out there and outlooks as well as the micro.
Awesome. And I have another question that says, you mentioned you do a video series. What is it called and where can I find it?
Interesting question. So I'll plug it again. So it is called Talking Loudly with Nate. You can find it. We post all the videos through my personal social media on LinkedIn, Nathan Trunfio, and also on Facebook to connect with me. And then mainly check it out on YouTube. Again, Talking Loudly with Nate. If you search that on YouTube, there's a ton of content in there now and a whole heck of a lot more to come soon.
Awesome. And a question, how about for new people who are limited with funding, what is the best course of action?
Yeah, that's a great question and one that we often get, especially at a lot of the events that we attend here locally. So there are methods in order to get into the real estate investing game without a ton of skin in the game. That can be either finding a capital partner, somebody that does have the liquidity and the money to invest into deals. The other is building up liquidity. That might mean you start wholesaling properties. Wholesaling is essentially flipping without actually taking down the property and moving through the renovation. Many people get their crack as just a real estate agent to build up that liquidity. There are many ways to get in the game without investing a ton of your own personal capital into it. But in some way, shape, or form, you have to align yourself with a capital partner that does have that liquidity, because it takes money to transact and to execute. And so either you build it up yourself or you find another partner. There are certainly some other very creative strategies to where you don't have to have money invested into the game. But in order to build a scalable real estate investing business, you do have to have some liquidity. So for people starting out, you got to find a way to build that liquidity, whether it's yourself personally through generating profits and money, or finding a capital partner to align with that, and trust you to do all the boots on the ground work.
Awesome. And another question is, what is the most widely used method for lead generation for your staff?
So personally, for our realty brokerage, is us as a single family operator buying distressed properties and flipping them, or a lot of times actually we'll assign a lot of these deals that we find direct to seller to some of our biggest investors and borrowers. But personally, what we do, this isn't necessarily the largest way to market, is we have a very large real estate brokerage, as I said before. So we've trained up most of our real estate agents to offer on any listing appointment the ability for us to buy the seller's property cash. It's an immediate buyout proposal. So we've been running marketing campaigns. We actually uniquely do it through radio in order to do that. I would say outside of that, we're a little bit unique that we have a 25-person real estate agent team. Direct mail is the most common, but there's, especially with technology, a lot more growing trends. I talked about email campaigns and text campaigns that are very effective from a conversion perspective. And then I'm a big proponent of doing things manually. It takes more work, but door knocking is not out of style. Calling is not out of style and never will be. And driving for dollars. So, I know I covered it all, but we do it mainly through our realty brokerage. Most people go direct mail because that's just the age-old way to market to direct seller. You got to find a good data provider. We have plenty of these vendors that we've used and that our borrowers and clients use that are real estate investors. Happy to refer you to anybody in any of those means of marketing properties.
Awesome. Another question, they says, I want to get in the house flipping business, but my credit is poor. So how do I attract an investor?
Really, really great question, and certainly can be a tough situation. Typically, if there's a number of different aspects that you can look at to attract an investor, whether it's a lender investor or a private investor per se. And so credit is one piece, the money can be another piece, and your experience. So showing proof of execution. So whether you've done deals before, you can easily show a case study. This is what I bought a property for. This is what it looked like. This is this is how I renovated it. This is what it looked like after, and this is what I sold it for. Here were all my costs, and here's the profit I made. If you can show that multiple times, it's an easy way to get an investor to partner with you. The other is not everybody has that experience. You got to start somewhere. So you have to know that you have to go to great detail and diligence, putting together specific, whether it's a pro forma plan where you lay out every single detail, show all the research you did on a given property, why you're buying it at a discount, how you vetted the renovation amount, how you vetted the amount that you're going to sell it for, how you're going to make a profit, and why they should invest with you. So if you don't have that experience, which is the easiest one, is show your proof of execution, then show the fact that you've done a lot of detailed research and due diligence and spent time, because you got to get somebody to invest in your investment strategy and your investment plan. And so that's my best advice for continuing to get in the game or to grow in the game.
Awesome. And then I have one last question. They say, is wholesaling hard to do? I have been building an investor list, and it's just been hard finding properties.
Man, right now in the market, it is hard to find good deals and properties. You have to, I always say, especially if you want to scale in real estate investing, you have to find a way to get direct to seller. I've skipped over just building a referral base of people that are around distressed homeowners, such as attorneys, probate attorneys, among many others. So, it's a tough one to say, but it's sort of some of the advice that I have related to that.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Nate, for joining us today. And as I said, we'll send this out to everybody so they can listen, and you can definitely it will have the connection to connect with direct lending partners. You can follow up with them. There were several people listed down here wanting more information, so I'm going to connect you with them as well. And you can work with them and get them taken care of as well with all their questions. So thank you again, Nate, for your time. Thank you, everybody, for joining, and everybody have a great day.
Thanks so much, Rodney and Think Realty. Hope everybody has a great day and end of your year. Big 2020 ahead.